Hello and welcome to our history channel, the Geoglyph Project. In September 2022, we will mark the bicentenary of deciphering the Rosetta Stone by Champollion. For that occasion, I would welcome you to join this online class to learn a little bit more about Old Egyptian. Most of those lessons will be based on James P. Allen's book, Middle Egyptian: An Introduction to the Language and Culture of Hieroglyphs. I would like to introduce you to how was the hieroglyphs deciphered in the first place. So basically, Champollion used the work of his contemporaries who have worked on trying to decipher the Rosetta Stone. He made the suggestion that hieroglyphs are not just depictions or pictograms. So it's not that you see a duck and that it means duck in the text. He suggested that maybe you can read some of the signs phonetically. And he began to compile those lists of royal names. So basically, in Egyptian text, royal names are inserted in something called a cartouche. A cartouche is this object that you see here that encloses the name of the pharaoh, and that cartouche is only used to signify the name of pharaohs. So it was obvious by looking at the Rosetta Stone and looking at the upper part, which is the hieroglyphic part, that there are multiple cartouches with the same recurring names. And in the Ptolemaic dynasty, it's pretty easy because the Ptolemies had only two names for royalties. The males were called Ptolemy, and the females were all called Cleopatra. So there's Cleopatra number 1, number 2, etc. So basically, he looked at the cartouches and started making theories about which name it could point to. And because we have in the Rosetta Stone the equivalent text in Greek, we know that at least the cartouches are referring to Ptolemy and Cleopatra. So by starting there, you can see that we have a cartouche in which you have letters, you count them, and you look at the Greek name. You count them too, and you realize that they are probably pointing at the phonetic or at the sound of those hieroglyphs. Not so much that this is a lion, but it's more like the sound that lion forms in hieroglyphs. And the good part of those two cartouches is that there are common letters between Cleopatra and Ptolemy. So there is the letter P. The letter P is common in both. So that's the little square you see here. It's common to both. So we can easily suggest that the P is the square. Then there is the T is also common to both. So Ptolemy has a T. It's this little half circle here. And you can find at the end of the name Cleopatra the letter T. Also, there's the letter O in both names. So we can assume that this lace here is the letter O. Finally, we have the letter L, which is probably this lion here, since you can find it in both letters. And so from that alone, he has already found the equivalent of 4 letters. So we know now that the letter P is written as a square, that the letter T is written as a half moon, that the letter O is written as this little lace, and that the letter L is written as a lion. Then we can continue with attributing the other letters in Ptolemy to the remaining signs in the cartouche. So this is an M, and this is I, and this is an S. So we now have the letter M, and the letter I, and the letter S, and the letter E. And finally, by looking at what remains in the name of Cleopatra, we can suggest that the Vulture here is an A, since it repeats twice, and that the T or the D, according to Egyptian pronunciation, is that little hand here, that this mouth here is the letter R. So we have a list of at least a dozen letters that we already were able to decipher.